Welcome to Conversations with Cox and Kielseth, and to be more specific, that is filmmaker Alex Cox and myself, film curator Pablo Kielseth. Alex will join us by phone from his home in Oregon, while I sneak away from my office to call him from one of the projection booths used by the International Film Series, which has been screening foreign and independent movies at CU Boulder since 1941. We will keep our chats to about 20 minutes as we discuss whatever movie-related topics grab our fancy. Thanks for joining us.
Okay, action.
There's a man who is waiting for a man. Reasons you don't know. He wants to kill a man. Maybe one, maybe two, or maybe three.
Shouldn't we talk separately too?
Alex, thanks so much for joining me. It's been a crazy, crazy day, and I don't know when Jason will get around to dropping this, but we're recording this, of course, as there are all kinds of shenanigans going on the Capitol. But we're going to move a little bit away from that because we're very movie focused here. That being said, we can move on to another documentary.
Another documentary that's playing on the IFS website.
Yeah, and this
is also really worth watching.
Yeah, so you take it away now. Collective, right?
Collective, which is a Romanian documentary, I guess. I guess the filmmakers are Romanian.
Yes, that's right.
And it's about an incredible scandal in the healthcare system, incredible procurement scandal, an incredible wickedness on the part of pharma and hospital administrators. It's just fascinating, and it's so interesting because it ties into a documentary that we talked about 6 months ago, an American documentary about a newspaper in the Philippines called Rappler.
Oh, that's right.
And their struggle against governmental corruption.
Yeah.
And it's astonishing because in both cases they lead up to an election, and in each case the right-wing candidate just gets re-elected after all this corruption has been revealed, and after all, so it's fascinating. I thought that both documentaries have this in common: the kind of these crusading journalists just facing the total kind of disenchantment on the part of the young population, especially, and the re-election of these dreadful politicians.
Absolutely, it had. I found that Collective had a lot of layers to it because it was. It kind of unfolds like a thriller. I felt because it starts out that the flashpoint being a fire that occurred on October 30th of 2015 at a this kind of underground concert venue that was actually had been a factory that so it was in a basement room of this factory with no exits, and several people died from this fire, but then more people died afterwards because of the medical improprieties that get sort of
the incapacity of the medical establishment due largely to corruption, but also just due to arrogance and incompetence.
Right.
That all of these people died unnecessarily in quite terrible circumstances, who could have been saved and who could have been sent to other extreme burn centers in other countries. I mean, that's part of what being in the European Union is about, is they can send their burn patients to Austria or Germany.
Right.
But they chose not to. They made a kind of a political point by, all these patients are going to be treated here at home, and they died.
Well, and then
so it's very strong documentary. It's and I'm so glad the IFS is showing it.
Yeah, well, it's gotten some great accolades. In fact, Rolling Stone put it at number one of its best films of 2020, and that should hopefully make some people think about watching it.
Pay some attention. It's really worth it. And as you say, it's kind of like a thriller the way it unfolds, and there are a number of characters. There's no annoying guy leading you through it and telling you what to think. It's just it's a fly on the wall type story of a number of characters, and it's really good.
Although in this case, the fly on the wall just happened to be in the right place at the right time for all these different events that were happening. And you get to follow some hardworking journalists, but you get to also see corrupt politicians as they're doing their thing, and bribes as they're being exposed, and whistleblowers get kind of help, sort of bring out some of the action that's happening. But it's yeah, like I said, it's got a lot of layers to it. It's really well done. I'm really impressed. I think the director was Alexander Nanau. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. And he was also his own cameraman and one of the editors and one of the producers on this. So, this is really a film that was put forth with a lot of determination and this uncanny ability to be at the right spot at the right time to capture a lot of very gripping moments. It's very good.
And it has a lot in common with the documentary about political corruption and journalism that we saw set in the Philippines just only 6 months ago.
Yeah. And we're dealing with some pretty grim subject matter, and I know that folks who are listening might want to change a pace from just stuff that's grim. And here on our podcast, we're always talking about just anything that's movie related. So I kind of like to think of this podcast as being a bit sort of Jekyll and Hyde in character, because we just spent our first 10 minutes talking about these grim documentaries that are absolutely 100% worth watching, and important documentaries. But
and really well made. I mean, I watched this collective thing all through without a pause. I didn't go away and watch the second half the following morning or something. I just thought it was spot on.
You should come up with a rating system, Alex, for the films that you watch, because I think that would be high praise from you. Is just like watched without pause, whereas you might have
watched without pause.
Yeah,
less than 2 hours long.
Right. And then there might be like your B grade might be watched with 1 or 2 pause, but it was to get a beer or to do something essential.
No, it's either watch without pause or throw them in the fiery pit.
Oh wow, that's I've got more layers to how I'll grade any movie that I watch, but I do. If I do not watch it past 20 minutes, it's got to be really, really, really horrible. I've got a pretty high tolerance for pain and and for punishment.
I don't. Hey, but I do have here seated next to me. You were starting the segue, so let me continue it.
Please.
That moving from these rather grim but very interesting films to the subject of the afterlife and why Disney and Pixar are interested in it. May I introduce our special guest, Todd Davies?
Please, Todd.
That's so funny that I'm supposed to be talking about the afterlife. I thought I was going to be talking about something completely different. But hey, Pab, how are you?
I'm doing okay, thank you, and thank you for joining us. We always enjoy having you, so I'm glad that you're here. And I just want to let you know that I also want to thank you, because it was because of hearing that you saw Soul that I saw it. And I normally, I actually do enjoy a lot of Pixar movies, but I've just been swamped in so many other things, and I ended up going out of my way and put it in the front of the queue, and I watched it, and I really, of course, I'm going to watch and enjoy anything where cats, a cat becomes involved in a substantial way.
I thought you'd like that cat.
Yeah. And there's also a cat in Coco, right? So those are...
It's a dog.
Oh, wait, no. Come on. No.
Yeah.
In Coco... there was a fiery thing that was very cat-like, and so it's not the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'll give you that.
Thank you. So, but continue. I'd like to hear what you have some thoughts about Disney, and is it nefarious, or is it other?
I think it's other.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, there was a whole period. Of course, when I was a child, Disney was it. Disney really was. talking about the culture that I was growing up in and expressing it every week. I would watch every week The Wonderful World of Disney.
All right.
And it invaded my dreams. So then there were, decades where it was just corporate speak and it was just forget it. I mean, I never watched any of it, but I'm starting to get drawn in again. Looking at Disney Plus, there are actually quite a few movies I want to see, which is very unusual for me, Pablo.
Yeah.
But mainly Coco and Soul. I mean, Coco especially, but they both impressed me as having a different aesthetic and actually being something new. And that Disney is actually leading now rather than just following in a corporate way. The main thing that impressed me about both Coco and Soul, although as Alex pointed out, both of them are about the afterlife, which was fascinating, which was the reason I watched Coco, because I couldn't believe there was actually a movie out about death. I thought that was incredible. And they did such a great job in Coco with dealing with death.
They did.
And they've done a really good job here, too. But mainly, there are no geniuses in either movie. Both movies they're against the cult of celebrity, both of them, and they're against the cult of believing that becoming a genius takes you out of real life. And that you then don't have to deal with real life. I mean, I don't want to give away anything, but in Coco, obviously, there's that wonderful plot about him just trying to discover who his father is, and that Mexican star that appears as his father. I mean, I imagine everyone's seen Coco by now, but I don't want to give it away about what actually happens as a result of that. In
Fair enough.
Soul, the place that really touched me the most was when he gets his dream. He gets it, and he says to the famous jazz singer who he now gets to play with, he said, it's not doing what I thought it would do. And she says, well, you heard the story about the little fish that said, I want to swim in the ocean. And the old fish says, you're in the ocean. And the little fish says, this is just water. I want the ocean. And then he says, well, what do we do now after we've had this great night? And she said, we go home and then we come back and we do it again.
Yeah.
Which I loved that, because that's exactly what a real artist does. It's not the fantasy of being an artist.
Right.
A real artist goes home, then comes back and does it again.
Right.
I mean, it's just part of your life.
Yeah.
It is your life. But to fantasize that it's going to change your life, that's a mistake. And when you look at the credits of both Coco and Soul, and it impressed me with Coco, but when I saw it in Soul, I really thought this is a trend. There's no genius listed. It's not, this is a film by, this is a directed by. There are immense creative credits.
Yeah.
I mean, they go on for pages of the people that worked on these films.
Yeah.
And that's very unusual. So I'm really looking forward to seeing more along these lines and seeing where it goes.
Well, I have to give it up for the director of Soul, because he also did Up and WALL-E, Monsters, Inc. I never saw Inside Out, but I thought both Up and WALL-E were exceptional, very, top tier. But yeah, I'll agree with you on the credits. I'll tell you what surprised me was seeing that, John Batiste was rolled in there for some of the jazz stuff, but also Trent Reznor and his creative partner were also, it's such a not, I would not have just, if you had played me some of the score, I would not have deduced that Trent Reznor was in there in the mix. It's a very unique, wonderful amalgam of different talents and creative spirits that kind of came together, make it all happen.
Yeah, not to mention whoever did the animation on the cat. I imagine you were really struck with that. Yeah. It's a pretty good cat.
Great cat.
Yeah.
Yep. High
muffins.
Yeah.
Muffins.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of both Coco and Soul, so I want to thank you for kind of putting that on, pushing that forward on my agenda. It's one of those interesting things, because Soul is one of like 4 very significant movies that have been put out through the streaming platform rather than specifically the theatrical experience, which is how it would have been done before. So it's with mixed feelings that I'm looking at this. But as an exhibitor, of course, I would have rather have gone to a theater. But at the same time, I'm glad I was able to watch it at all. So there's that.
Well, and I would have rather seen it in the theater because I'm sure I missed a whole bunch. I mean, I watched it on my little tiny laptop. And the amount of work that went into it, I would have loved to have seen it on a big screen, which is the way I saw Coco. But, you know, we deal with what we have.
Right.
You know?
Right. Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Oof. Well, I'm glad that we were able to inject a little levity into proceedings since the other stuff was a bit grim.
This was really a mixed metaphor podcast, Pablo.
Well, in closing, I need to ask, though, since you're watching other stuff on Disney Plus, what are some of those other things? I'm curious. This is an aside.
Oh, I'm just starting. I mean, it was really only from watching Soul that I started to even think about it. Because then I started scrolling and I thought, you know, there are a lot of Pixar movies that I've never looked at that I wouldn't mind seeing. And last night I had to watch Ratatouille. So that is really funny. I mean, you know how I love food.
Of course.
And I love Paris.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh my gosh, a cartoon about food and Paris. I must see this. And it was really funny because I was watching it on my little laptop with my earplugs in while Alex was watching the documentary about corruption in Romanian hospitals on his laptop. And that really seemed like a metaphor for our marriage, really. Right there.
It's very nice.
Oh, I want to ask very quickly because Soul has to do with a near-death experience. We can say that. And I'm trying to remember, Alex, if he can remind me, what was the near-death experience that one of your, it was an actor that a car wreck or something, and I'm trying to remember. I don't know the details.
Oh, Sal
Zamora.
What happened there?
What happened?
Sal Zamora was in Miami, Florida, and he was in a car being driven by another guy at a intersection, and they got sideswiped by another vehicle. And he had an out-of-body experience where he was like in the wreckage of the car, and he saw the car from above looking down on the intersection, and he saw all the people running towards him, and he thought, they're running towards us to help us out of the wreckage of the car. And the people ran up to the wrecked cars, and they popped the trunks, and they stole all their luggage and ran away. And that was Del's out-of-body experience. But he survived and continues to be a working actor and director in Los Angeles.
Pablo, I have a story, too.
Oh,
Can
wonderful.
I tell you a really quick story?
Yes, please.
When I was working on a film with Jodie Foster, the producer of the film, who was a quite glossy, handsome dude, told me that he had had a near-death experience. He had died on the operating table when he was having heart surgery. And he said, and everything happened just the way they said. I walked through a tunnel toward a bright light and was told to turn back. And he was quite detailed. So he finishes...
Take a number.
I don't remember. So he finishes telling me this, and I run over to Jodie and I say, you'll never believe this. You know what Steve just told me? And I told her the story, and she looks at me for a minute, and then she goes, Todd? And I said, yes, Jodie. And she said, you look like the kind of woman who would want to fuck a guy who had had a near-death experience. So I have got to say that Jodie Foster is one of the shrewdest actors I have ever met. Because indeed, that turned out to be what was going on. But anyway, so I don't really know if he ever had a near-death experience.
I'm dying.
Can I ask what was the picture? What was the name of the title that you were working on with Jodie Foster? Backtrack. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn. That is. And also, hopefully, we're not giving some bad advice to some predators out there as to how they can,
No, I think what I'm trying to do is give advice to all young women. If some guy uses that on you in a bar, just say, "Oh, how fascinating," and then tell him a story about your cat.
There you go. Boom. I like it. I like it.
And on that note,
hey, thanks so much for, sharing some time out of your day to talk about anything movie related.
Always a delight.
Yeah, I hope you're both doing okay, given all the craziness outside. And let's hope it all settles down. That's the best we can hope for at this point. So,
yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Don't worry. The FBI and the militarized police and the NSA and the CIA and the mainstream media, they're there to protect us, Pablo. It's going to be okay.
Aw.
I don't think he's read the news today, Pablo.
Well,
anyway, I hope it does too.
I think the guys, the Republic will be there tomorrow, but we'll
I think
see.
it will be. I hope it will be, but I hope Ted Cruz won't be there tomorrow. Boy, for sure.
That would be nice. I always feel safer.
Or Josh Hawley.
I just want to say it always feels safer for me knowing that the both of you are out there. So,
thank you.
I'll meet you guys.
Yeah.
Todd, anytime you want to come on, of course, please do join us. And Alex, I'll give you a buzz next week. And I'm going to call it for today and thank people for listening. And again, encourage people to go to check out internationalfilmseries.com. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, listeners. And
thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob.
We shall talk more soon.
And cut. Okay, that's a wrap.
Thanks again for joining Alex Cox and myself today. I'd like to thank Jason Phelps for handling the audio and Ted Thacker for letting us use the intro to his song, The Ballad of Slim Cessna, for the musical cues that bookend these conversations.